Hello, welcome back to Football League World TV. It's time for the latest edition of the debate, and here we're looking at Plymouth Argyle and assessing whether they really are the real deal. Looking very good for them in the League One table at the moment. Just 6 games for them to go as they look to seal a spot in the Championship for next year. I'm your host, George Dagless, and joining me this afternoon are Toby Wilding and Marcus Ali. Toby, how are you?
Yeah, good, thanks. Looking forward to this one. Plymouth have been a really sort of interesting side to keep an eye on, haven't they, over the course of the season with everything that's gone on there, both on and off the pitch. So, yeah, going to be really good to sort of get stuck into what's been going on at home park.
Certainly will be. Marcus, how are you getting on?
Yeah, really well. Thanks, George. Similar to Toby, really, it's a really exciting League One promotion race, and Plymouth possibly stick out a little bit as a side we haven't seen in this territory in recent years. So glad to be on talking about them.
Good stuff. Plymouth fans, let us know what you made of the season so far, and let us know what you think is going to happen in the final few weeks of the League One campaign. Looking good so far. You'll be looking to get over the line in the final weeks of the season. Let's get going. Toby, we'll come to you first of all. Let's talk Plymouth season so far in a general sense. They started really well, didn't they? Set a really lightning pace up near the top of League One. At times through the season, they've perhaps threatened to drop out occasionally, but overall it's been pretty strong for them. And in recent weeks, they found that blistering form again, haven't they? They obviously lost to Ipswich, pretty recently, but up to then they were winning games for fun, and it's got them firmly in contention for a top 6 finish at least this season.
Yeah, I think it's been really impressive, hasn't it? Especially when you sort of consider the circumstances sort of off the pitch. I mean, you look back to last season when they were just back up in League One after promotion during that shortened season on the points per game basis from League Two, and it was a bit of a difficult first season back last year. It looked like to me, they never really got a proper consistent run of results going, and I think it was 18th they finished in the end last season. So sort of looking at that, for many, they won't really have stood out as being one at the start of the season you would have expected to be in this sort of position with so little time remaining in the campaign. So in that sense already, it's really impressive what they've done. And then you sort of add into that the change that they've had in the dugout at home park and midway through the season with the departure of Ryan Lowe and obviously Stephen Schumacher. I think we're going to get into a bit more later on, sort of sticking around and keeping them going. They've really coped well with that as well, haven't they? Sometimes that sort of change might threaten to derail a season in itself, but it hasn't at all. And that's sort of credit to the way that they've approached that situation and managed to keep themselves going. And as you say, it was a bit of a setback at the weekend at Ipswich. That result's a disappointing one, but nevertheless, they're still in a really good position here at the minute to go on and at the very least get a shot at the Championship via the playoffs.
Marcus, what have you made of their season so far? Are you surprised in some sense that they're still in the picture? I mean, a few probably would have tipped them at the start of the season to be playoff contenders, but throughout the campaign, they've stuck there, haven't they?
Yeah, to be honest, even initially, I was surprised to see them throw their names into the mix. It was 6 defeats from 7 and just 1 draw to finish last season, which was pretty concerning because it looked like Ryan Lowe's ideas. It was a question of really whether he'd sort of run his course in the dugout and whether the players were really playing for him anymore. They somehow managed to lose 6-0 to Charlton at the back end of last season as well. So it was a really important summer transfer window, but they absolutely nailed it, to be honest. Their recruitment has been what has fueled this run and what continues to make them so strong even after Ryan Lowe's departed. So, yeah, especially after the dip that they suffered sort of immediately after Stephen Schumacher took the reins, there was a question with the likes of Ipswich and Bolton and Sheffield Wednesday performing so well beneath them if they were going to fall away to mid-table, but they've shown they're much stronger than that. And I think the system and the continuity at the club has been something very important that's been able to see them sort of push themselves back into a sort of solid promotion place. But I was just looking back on a bit of their summer recruitment in my notes and just reading off a handful of names. And these are players that aren't just complementing their squad. They've signed a handful of real key players that start week in, week out. You've got Gillespie, Wilson and Scar, that made up a new back three. You've got Houghton, who's played in central midfield the whole season. Bolton's come back into the team recently. And then Ryan Broom and Jordan Garrick, who were maybe loanee signings that went under the radar a little bit. Obviously, Broom just coming from Peterborough and Garrick from Swansea, but are players that have made really important contributions over the course of the season, which has enabled Plymouth to really overperform compared to their budget and the size of some of the teams around them. I think we're used to seeing this kind of overperformance from clubs like Oxford. They've been able to do it over the last few years, but Plymouth have definitely shown themselves as a real model club. And yeah, they're so well run under Simon Hallett, the owner, and the recruitment and the scouting has been able to see them overperform given their budget, as we've seen Oxford do in recent years. A playoff semi-final between those two would definitely be very enticing in the future.
Certainly would be. Toby, let's get on to some of Plymouth's strengths. We'll talk perhaps on the pitch strengths in a minute, but Mark has kind of, mentions a good aspect of Plymouth. They're a very well-run club. You look at some of the bigger sides in League One, and perhaps they've taken their time to get their ship in order, really, where Plymouth have taken their time, obviously coming up from League Two not too long ago. It's been a gradual process, but it seems off the field that there's a lot of things going right at home park at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. As you say, they are really quite soundly run. They've steadied the ship well. Those signings, as you say, they're impressive deals that they've done, and that sort of shows sort of the standing that the club have. In terms of those loan deals, the likes of Garrick, Romany Critchlow, even Stephen Sessignon. That was a really eye-catching name that came in January from Fulham. That sort of shows, as I say, the standing that Plymouth do seem to have with other teams that, these clubs further up the pyramid are willing to send their players there to sort of really learn and develop. And that has certainly paid off for Plymouth in terms of the performances that they've got from those players as well. I think also you sort of look at it in regards to the current squad as well. They look to me to be really sort of well handled in terms of they're ahead of the game with the contracts. They seem to be very preemptive, almost, for want of a better word, in terms of they get these deals done early for key players. That I'm looking at someone like a Danny Mayer signed a new deal back at the early stages of this season when he was still sort of being plagued by injury, and there was maybe, you might have said, is that a risk given his fitness situation at the minute? That's already looking like it's paying off at the minute with the form that he's now producing. So definitely in terms of what they're doing off the pitch with both the signings they're bringing in and the way that they're sort of holding this squad together as a whole, even when you sort of consider, say that departure in the managerial department that we mentioned earlier, you do have to give a lot of credit to Plymouth for the way they're running their club.
Yeah, they've certainly shown a real ability to adapt, aren't they? Marcus, in terms of on the pitch, we've obviously mentioned a number of players already. Which ones do you think stand out, though? Which ones have been key to this charge they've made so far this season?
Well, Ryan Hardy's kicked on considerably this season. He's got 16 goals in all competitions. I think he only managed 5 last season. So that's been a real improvement, and a player that has been a real focal point for them at the top of the pitch, and has also enabled Lowe and Schumacher actually just to rotate through their other striker options to keep it fresh as well. So we've seen the likes of Niall Ennis and Luke Jeffcott and Garrick sort of rotated in partnering Hardy at the top of the pitch, and that's been a really important sort of area for them this season. I think Panuche Kamara is someone that's destined to play in the Championship. His relentless energy in central midfield really sets the tone. He's a sort of classic box-to-box number 8. He can pull off some last-ditch tackles on the edge of your box, and then also pop up in the opposition's area to score some vital goals as well. So he's a player that's been crucial for them this season. And Jordan Houghton alongside him, a player with maybe a little bit more natural ability, a bit more vision, able to sort of orchestrate attacks a little bit more rather than relying on the incredible engine that Kamara seems to have. Has really helped them this season, and knowing their roles, sticking with that system, finding the way that they want to play. They are a little bit more possession based, I'd say, than most of the teams in League One, but they've stuck to that. They've stuck to their principles. They've found a system that they want to play, and they've stuck with it for the whole season. And that definitely aided that transition between Ryan Lowe and Stephen Schumacher, because he essentially kept the ideology pretty much the same. It's definitely come across that he was a key voice in the dressing room, even under Ryan Lowe, and obviously knows a lot of these players, even from taking them towards that League Two promotion. I think the defence has probably stood out a little bit more than the attack. That has been something that they've been able to build strongly from. It's not quite as strong as the teams above them in League One, but considering that it was a fresh back three to start with this season, they've performed extremely well, and Michael Cooper in between the sticks continues to go from strength to strength as well. So there's good players all over the pitch, and it's also quite a tightly knit squad. They don't have the depth of some of the other teams around them, but sometimes that can work in your favour, and it just increases that team cohesion. With it's easier to keep all of the players happy, giving them playing time. But I think Ryan Hardy probably a standout alongside Kamara, who's definitely a player that I see playing above League One level in the future.
Yeah, I suppose that's one of the issues for Plymouth. If they don't go up, there's every chance that some of their players will get poached in the summer. Toby, let's look on the flip side. Are there any particular weaknesses you think Plymouth got that might concern them in the final weeks of the campaign?
Yeah, it's a tough one, that really, isn't it? Because of, as Marcus says, they've got so many strengths all over the pitch. But I think maybe, as you touched on the sort of the tight-knit nature of the squad, I do wonder whether we're about to see that come into a bit of scrutiny with the injury to Ryan Hardy that he picked up at Ipswich last weekend. That's now going to keep him out for at least a couple of games, potentially a few more, which, as we'll see when we touch on sort of the running, he's going to make things certainly tricky for Plymouth when you sort of look at the sides they've got left to play, and that perhaps puts a bit of pressure on some of their other sort of attacking options to really step up and get them goals, because Luke Jeffcott is sort of maybe the obvious name you'd look to there, and he very much to me feels like a player. He sort of scores in bursts, doesn't he? So it can be one of those where he'll have a good run and he'll be seemingly unstoppable for a bit, and then they'll dry up for a little while. So that may be a sort of a slight concern for Plymouth now in the absence of Hardy, especially when you sort of look at the rest of the squad. There's not really anybody else who's close to double figures at the minute. So I do just wonder whether that sort of injury issue as well. I know I think James Bolton as well at the other end of the pitch worth touching on. He was forced off at Ipswich at the weekend. What sort of effect is that going to have on Plymouth defensively? So I think for me that is really the big question now. How do they sort of cope with those injuries to some of their key players at such a key stage part of the season?
Manager Stephen Schumacher will be the one has to try and navigate those problems. Let's talk about the Plymouth gaffer Marcus. Perhaps sort of thrust into the limelight a little bit after Ryan Lowe's exit. Schumacher clearly felt that the time was right to be the main man. There may have been a few concerns at Plymouth that it was all going to sort of fizzle out for them after their bright start to the season. But in fairness to him, he's kept them on an even keel. And you wouldn't really have noticed too much upheaval. I think, as we said earlier on in the show, he's done well at keeping the ideology the same. Obviously, he worked with Ryan Lowe anyway, so there's a similar approach there. But do you think he gets enough credit for the job he's done in the time he's been in the dugout at Home Park?
I wouldn't say so. I do think he has gone under the radar a little bit, as Plymouth probably have done in the entire season, to be honest. It's a tricky one to judge, really, because we see these sort of internal appointments come up more often, and they definitely have been more common in the last few years. And yeah, they usually go one of two ways, but I think it's sort of impossible to know what the relationship is, the assistant manager, and how integral they were under the previous manager. Plymouth were bullish about it, to be honest. They were really confident. Gave Schumacher the job, I think, on the same day that Ryan Lowe's exit was announced. So, they were clearly very confident in his ability, and that relationship that he already had with the squad of players was strong enough to continue the progress that they made under Lowe. So, no, he's an exciting up-and-coming manager, obviously. I think is his first job as the main man. So, it's been really good to see. Maybe we'll see more clubs sort of go towards this if they see a manager move on to a higher place in the future. I think Liam Richardson was Paul Cook's assistant at Wigan Athletic. That's another success story of almost going what you've got. Obviously, Wigan didn't have as much choice as Plymouth did at that due to that scenario. But no, I don't think he has got enough credit, and neither has the whole of the Plymouth team, because they're punching well above their weight compared to the teams around them, and playing some really good football along the way. It was 6 clean sheets in a row, of course, before the defeat at Ipswich last time out. So no, Schumacher deserves a lot of credit, and I'm sure even if they don't get promoted this season, he'll be confident of continuing their steep progress and upward trajectory going into next year.
I think what speaks volumes for Schumacher, Toby, as well, is Ryan Lowe was rightly seen as one of the bright young EFL managers, given the work he'd done at Bury and obviously at Plymouth as well before that move to Preston. So obviously you may have expected a bit of a drop off from Plymouth once someone with that reputation leaves, but Schumacher's come in and you could almost give him a similar label now. Obviously, it's very early in his managerial career and he'll be looking to prove himself. A promotion's obviously going to help that this season. But it's probably fair to say that he's one of the young upcoming managers in the EFL now as well, isn't it?
Yeah, he has to be now because of, as you say, sort of the circumstances he came in under. It was sort of a really difficult challenge for someone to take over from Ryan Lowe with the work that he'd been doing with this squad and the sort of the tune that he'd been getting out of them. But obviously it's paid off, and I think you do have to credit Plymouth for that, not just for giving Schumacher the chance to step in, but for also making sort of a case to him to stay and take on this role. Because I mean, we often see, don't we, when managers move on, they will look to take their backroom team with them. I think there was sort of suggestions that Schumacher had the option to go with Lowe to Preston, I think was reported at one point as well. So in that sense, you've got to give credit to Plymouth for the fact that they were able to convince Schumacher to stay on at home park and sort of keep them going, and that sort of shows sort of the vision and the setup that Plymouth have, that they are able to make an appealing case for Schumacher to stay in League One rather than make that step up to the Championship. And as we can see with the position they're in now and with the results that they've been producing under him, it's a decision that's absolutely paid off for the Pilgrims.
Certainly has. Let's look at the run in there. This is probably going to be crucial for Plymouth. They've got only 6 games left, so they played more than everyone else around them, apart from Ipswich, who sit in 10 points behind them, level on points. Having said that, Plymouth did lose to Ipswich, of course, last time out, and in their final 6 games, they've got a number of playoff rivals to face. They've got Oxford this weekend, which, as Marcus mentioned, could easily be a playoff semi-final. Then they've got Burton after that, and then their final 4 games: Wycombe, Sunderland, Wigan, and MK Dons. It's a very, very unenviable task that Plymouth have in front of them, Marcus. But having said all of that, if they can get the job done in those games, they'll go into the playoffs with huge confidence, won't they?
Exactly, yeah. You say it's an unenviable task, but playing these teams around them, I think it's 5 of 6 are against teams in the top 8. And that is sort of Ipswich are just outside the top 8 with an outside chance of breaking in. So it does seem really they are playing 5 of their last 6 games against teams in that mini league, sort of fighting out for a place in the top 6. But if they are able to get positive results, they've got Wycombe and Sunderland to come, then that could cause a big enough gap to be built and a big enough cushion to be built to almost confirm their playoff place before it goes right down to the end of the season. So, it depends what way you look at it. Obviously, it's a tougher run-in than most of the teams around them. But if they're able to continue their good form and bounce back from the defeat at Portman Road, then it should be quite, as you say, a run that can build a lot of confidence going into the playoffs. And it also should be a good test for Schumacher, because over 2 legs against another good side in League One that will be deserving of their playoff place, it'll be an interesting tactical battle, and he can start testing his skill set against managers that he might end up facing over 2 legs in these final 6 games. So it's going to be difficult. Currently a 7-point cushion over Sunderland in 7th place, having played 1 more game. So if Sunderland win that, then it would end up being 4. So it's going to be interesting. Could be some nervy moments, but I'd be feeling quietly confident in the Pilgrims camp at the moment.
Yeah, I suppose, Toby, the Plymouth players have just got to relish the challenge, haven't they? They've got an opportunity to lay down a marker before we get to the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as you say, with the sides in there, if they would get these wins in these final games of the regular season, and then they're going into the playoffs against one of them teams, potentially even 2, obviously, if they make the final, then it gives them a huge amount of sort of belief, and it really puts the pressure on whichever of those teams it might be they're coming up against. I think the other thing is, obviously, as Marcus touched on there, they have got a pretty decent advantage over Sunderland with that 7 points, and it's worth noting as well that Plymouth have been excellent at home this season. I think there's only Sheffield Wednesday who've picked up more points on their own turf than Plymouth has. So if they can sort of keep that going during these final 6 games of the season, even just at home, then you would imagine that on that alone they might have enough to pick up the points that they need to break into the top 6, and that sort of really gives them a bit of a chance to sort of assess that Easter weekend. Wycombe and Sunderland, as we say, on the Good Friday, Easter Monday is going to be huge. Those couple of games in the space of a few days, if they can get wins from them against the sides who are, as was mentioned, just outside the playoff places, then that could really sort of give them a chance to sort of establish that top 6 spot, before the end of the season, and then that gives them a chance to sort of maybe experiment or rest players or sort of just build up that sharpness. So it could really open up quite nicely here for Plymouth if they get this right in the next few games, leading into then a couple of tough ones to end the season with Wigan, who obviously look well set for automatic promotion, and then third place MK Dons. As you say, there really is challenges all over that schedule for Plymouth, but it's one they should relish to really sort of get themselves settled nicely for the playoffs one way or another.
Yeah, it gives them a chance to really show what they're all about in the final weeks of the season. Okay, so that's been the debate on Football League World TV for today. It's time to get to our conclusion. And we've been looking at Plymouth Argyle, the real deal. We've had 40 games to assess them now. I think they're certainly, it's fair to say, playoff contenders by this point. But the question probably is, Toby and Marcus, are they going to be in the Championship next season? Toby, we'll come to you first of all.
Oh, this is such a tough question. Can I sit on the fence? I mean, I'll look at the table here, and I think with the quality that Rotherham and Wigan have produced and the games in hand that they've got, I can't really see Plymouth from this position catching those two in terms of an automatic promotion place. But then, as we've just been saying, I do think with the home form and the position they're in, they should be in the playoffs quite comfortably for me come the end of the season. And then, as we've said so many times before, it is just an absolute lottery from there. There's so many sort of variables when you're playing that many important games in just the space of a few days. So at that point, it will be really tough to call. But I do think with sort of the results that they've been picking up, if they do end the season strongly, then that confidence and momentum, I could see that maybe just carrying them through the playoffs. So I'll be positive for them and say, yes, they'll be in the Championship next season. Okay,
they'll certainly be pleased with that one. So, Marcus, how do you see it?
I'm not as convinced, sadly. I do think they'll finish in the top 6, but I think the likes of MK Dons and maybe Sheffield Wednesday will just have a little bit too much in the playoffs. But I definitely think they've got a lot to be proud of this season. And they're definitely on an upward trajectory looking longer term. Next season, it could be tough again with some more strong relegated sides from the Championship coming down. But definitely in the future, if they're able to keep building the way they are, I can see Argyle having to sell a couple of players in the summer if they don't win promotion. But I completely trust their scouting department and who they're using for recruitment to reinvest smartly and come back stronger. So in the next few years, they're definitely a side I expect to be playing in the Championship, although I would be surprised compared to the opposition if they are able to realise that ambition this season.
Okay, we'll see what happens, see if there's one final surprise in store for Plymouth, see if they can get over the line in the final few weeks. But as you say, Marcus, even if they don't, the building blocks have been put in place now, haven't they, for them to make an assault on the Championship in the near future. And that's it for the debate on Football League World TV, and that's it for the programmes today on the channel as well. Just a quick plug for those watching, do subscribe to Football League World TV on YouTube and do like this video as well. That'd be greatly appreciated by all of us here. Toby and Marcus, great to get your thoughts this afternoon on Plymouth's chances and how they've been going this season. Been a really interesting chat, and for those watching as well, thanks for joining us. But from myself, Toby and Marcus, it's bye for now.